Hey guys, welcome to Cadence Talk Show. Now today we will be talking a little as it relates to building your resume. And persons may wonder what is a resume or what's the importance of a resume. Isn't it a piece of paper you use or you send when you are applying for a job? But truth be told, your resume actually represents your brand. It is something you use to sell yourself. This is what employer use to determine whether or not you are called for an interview. And so you want to ensure that whatever document you send out there, you are actually putting your best foot forward and you are actually selling yourself in the right way. So if you're new to Cadence Talk Show, I want you to like, subscribe, turn on your post notification bell so that when we post our next video, you'll be the first to know about it. For all my returning subscribers, thank you for staying tuned. And I want you to always remember to tell a friend about Cadence Talk Show. Stay tuned. So as stated, your resume actually is your brand. This is what you will use to sell yourself. And as stated, this is something that can determine whether or not you're selected to do an interview. Like I always say to my colleagues or to my friend, once I am selected for an interview, I know that I will get that job. And guess what? I always ensure that my resume is up to standard and it is formatted in the correct way. Too often when we sit in interviews or when we're doing the shortlisting process to select persons for interview, and when we go through those resumes, mark you, the candidate might be the perfect person you'd want in your organization, but just how they format or structure their resume is like, you're not impressed. And you don't want that to be you. You don't want when an employer take up your resume, it is all over the place. It is untidy. It is not organized. And so you have to ensure that you put extreme care in what you do and the brand that you will be sending out there. So some things that I would want you not to do when sending out your resume or preparing your resume, your email addresses. I'm going to implore you all that ensure that the email address you choose to use is one of professional standard. Too often when we look on resume or job application, we see some unprofessional email addresses. For example, sexydoll23@gmail.com, killakiller44@yahoo.com. Those are unprofessional email addresses. And sometimes these email address calls for you to be judged the wrong way. So nothing is wrong in having those email addresses, but you use that for your personal life. When you're sending out a formal document or when you're sending out your resume, please ensure that the email address you choose to use is one that is professional. So johnbrown@yahoo.com, kimcarter@gmail.com. These are professional email addresses that I would rather you use on your resume or on your application, or if you're supposed to email, because we're living in the 21st century where you actually don't need to go to an organization to drop off your application. And so when you are emailing out your resume and your application letters, this is an email address that I'd want you all to use, a professional email address. Now, some things that you don't necessarily need to put on your resume. You don't need to put your date of birth on your resume. Truth be told, sometimes you might be judged for your age. And you might be young, but you're full of knowledge and a wealth of information. But the moment employers see your age, is that they're like, no, this person is young, this person is inexperienced. And it don't give you the opportunity to come in an interview to sell yourself. And so this is something that you would not want to include on your resume. You also don't need to include your marital status. So whether you're married, single, in a relationship, that is not necessarily needed for your resume. And also your religious affiliation, those are things that you don't necessarily include on your resume. Another common mistake that persons tend to do on your resume where you have reference. A lot of persons love to put upon request. And if you are able to list your resume, your reference from the get-go, your 2 references, because most organizational employees ask you to have at least 2 references. And if you're able to list your references from the get-go, that will do you justice, because truth be told, most times employees tend to do background checks on their prospective employees, and one of the things, sometimes they might reach out to the person that you would have listed as one of your referees, and so it is important to just not put available upon request, but actually list these persons and provide a contact details on your resume. You need to ensure that we are keeping up with trends. And the resume format change constantly. So the resume you used to use 5 years ago is not the same resume format that we're now using. And so your resume is something that has to be constantly changing. So some key information that is very important on your resume. Of course, you're gonna have your name, your address, the contact number that employee can reach you on. But it is important to have your objective. And your objective needs to be related to the work that you are applying for. So you can't have an objective that has nothing to do with the job that you're applying for. And you cannot use the same objective that you would have used to probably apply for a teaching job to apply for a customer service job. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all, and you have to ensure that you tailor your objective to the job that you are applying for. Now, your work experience is something that is a must on your resume. And this is for persons who would have had work experience, prior work experience. And too often what we realize is that persons, when they are listing their work experience, you just write work at X company, and you put the time that you work at X company, you put the position that you worked at, but you really did not list your duty. And don't take it for granted that because you work at X company as a receptionist means that applying to Y company as a receptionist is the same job description or the same duties you're going to do, and so the employer automatically know exactly what you're applying for. And so once you put your work experience, you start out with the date, that the period that you'd have worked at the company, the name of the company that you would have been employed, the position that you would have worked. It is also important to list your specific duties, so the things that you would have to do whilst you were employed at the organization you're at. So if you were a receptionist, probably you can say answer 200 phone calls a day, make daily log of visitors who come on the compound. So these are some of the stuff that you need to list as it relates to your duties, and employees are impressed because then they know what you are capable of doing versus what you're not capable of doing. And so please ensure that you list these information. So you have your work experience first. That is one of the most important things. So most persons or the certain resume format would ask you to list your educational background, but with the recent up-to-date revised resume format, they're asking you for your work experience, because person want to know what wealth of information do you have, what do you bring to the table. And so listing your work experience first is a plus, and it don't give employers time to be flipping and searching through your resume. So it is always good to start out with your work experience, then you list your educational credentials. Now when listing your educational credential, for example, if you're a person who have a first degree or a second degree, it is important to note that you don't necessarily need to list your CSEC subjects, because at this point your CSEC subjects are somewhat irrelevant. It's not needed, because for you to be at the first degree level or for you to be at a master's level, it means that you will have to pass that section. So for persons now who don't have a first degree or second degree, you just have your CXCs and CAPES. It is fine, because that's what you have. That's your only qualification. And so you are going to list. So you're not just going to write 3, 4, 5 CSEC subjects, but rather you are going to list those subjects. You don't need to put the grades that you would have received for those subjects, but it is important to not just write the number of subjects you have, but to actually list these subjects. subject, and you write all your educational background now for those persons. But for persons who would have been at the first degree or the master's level, you need not to put your high school or your primary school. For persons who are just at the CSEC CAPE level, then that's where you would have put the institution that you would have attended to do sixth form, or the institution you would have attended for high school. And primary school is really not important, so you don't need to put the primary school that you would have attended. And so these are some valid information that you need on your resume. Now, another thing that a lot of persons take for granted is your accomplishments. So what are some of the things that you would have accomplished throughout your life or throughout your career? And these things are important because it makes employers know who it is that they're working with. Let employers know what is it that you bring to the table. And so it is important to have a section where you actually put in your accomplishments in it. Another thing is your extracurricular activity, because persons want to know what do you bring to the table. And so if it's an organization that have a netball club or football team, or you're someone who will be willing to represent or to participate in these stuff. And so all extracurricular activity, whether it be at primary, high school, college, in your community, at your church, it is important to put these stuff on your resume. Now, bear in mind, as stated, your resume is your brand, and you are building your brand and you're building yourself. Now, your resume is what is going to represent you, and so you want to ensure that you put your best foot out there. Now, another important thing that is needed on your resume is skills. Employers really want to know what do you bring to the table. So are you a team player? Are you good at computer? Are you good at Microsoft Office? Are you good at database? Whatever it is that you're good at, are you good at communication, both oral and written? And so employers need to know what skills you actually bring to the table. As stated, you have to ensure that the skill you are writing actually match the job that you are applying to. You want to ensure that those skills are suited for the position you're applying for. And so don't just go and just write anything because I'm sending out a resume and you just want it to look good. So these are some stuff that you need to look at and you need to pay keen attention to when you are selling yourself. As stated earlier in the introduction, too often I have sit in interview process, I have helped with shortlisting, and most times when we see the resumes, they are so terrible. The information is all over the place, the formatting is so untidy, the font size that they choose to use is so unprofessional, and so we have to ensure that whatever we're doing, we use a standard format. The internet is there to help you, because if you go into Google right now, if you use Google, go on Google Doc, there are resume templates there that you can use as your guide. And sometimes when you look at a person's resume, mark you, that person might have been an ideal candidate. That person is someone that you probably would have to work in your organization. However, just because of how they formatted their resume allowed them to miss that opportunity. And so you want, when an employer take up your resume and they look at your resume, they are so impressed with you that when you go in that interview, it's like they just want to give you the job. Bear in mind, you are not the only person applying for that particular position. There are thousands or hundreds or even, there are so many persons vying for the same position that you are applying for. And because there are so many other persons going after that one position, you have to ensure that whatever you do, you are doing it to the best of your ability. Whatever information you put out there will represent you. So when an employer take up your resume, they should be so impressed that they can't wait to even do an interview, or probably even step the interview process. Because I've seen and I've heard instances where when an employer take up an individual resume, they were so impressed that they didn't even do the interview. Now, Ladies and gentlemen, what I want you to remember is that your digital footprint follow you everywhere you go. And so we need to be careful. So it's all fun and game to have certain things on social media, but we need to remember that employees are now doing their research. They are now doing their background check. And so sometimes you have some information on the internet that you really don't want to have on the internet, especially for persons who are actively in the job world, actively seeking employment. And so we need to be careful of the information that we're putting out there about ourselves, because most times we will not get the opportunity to have an interview to even explain or to even sell ourselves. And as stated, my resume, I know once I apply for a job, my resume will be so good, I know I will be called for an interview. Now, the interview is the make or break segment, because this is where you get the opportunity to sell yourself. So for this year, I'm imploring you all to ensure that your resume that you are sending out there will represent your brand, will speak highly of you. And when you send your resume out there, you should have full confidence that this employer will actually give you an opportunity to come and sell yourself in an interview. So we're going to take pride in how we format and structure our resume. We are going to take pride in the information we put on our resume, and we are going to take pride in our overall presentation, because this year is all about building your brand. So what brand are you building? What information are you giving persons to think or to know about you? So guess what? We are going to utilize the internet a lot to help us to format our resume. So thank you all for listening, and I hope this information was useful. I hope this information you'll able to use it in your personal and your professional life, and I wish you all the best, especially for the persons who are actively seeking employment. I hope that you will take something away from this presentation as it relates to your resume and building your brand. Thank you.